a.m. on September 20th, 2023. We will call this work session for the Animal Service Center of the Mesilla Valley to order. If you all would rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, then I will we'll take roll. So, all right, County Manager Macias.
Present.
All right. Miss Mary Lou Ward.
Present.
Commissioner Sanchez, I am present. Councilor Corrin.
Present.
Councilor Yvonne Flores. Present. All right. Mayor Pro Tem Gondara is absent. Okay. Ms. Bencomo.
Present.
Okay. And Commissioner Sheldro Hernandez is absent. I think he was going to be joining us, so if he joins us then, or Mayor Pro Tem, we will check their attendance. So, all right, then we'll move on to, we do have a quorum, so we'll move on to the review of the proposed changes to the JPA between the ASCMV and the City of Las Cruces. Ms. Bencomo.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and Board. I need to just make sure I know where the controls are here.
I think just below the,
Arrows.
yeah, they should be able to pull out the tray with the keyboard.
All right, thank you so much. So today we are going to be reviewing some proposed changes to the Animal Service Center of the Mesilla Valley Joint Powers of Agreement and a proposed memorandum of understanding. The current JPA was executed in 2012, and since then, of course, there have been many changes. Most notable, the ownership of the property has changed and has now been consolidated with the City of Las Cruces. Previously, the City of Albuquerque had an interest. A new building and structures have been added to the site, and fiscal agent services and responsibilities have changed over these last 11 years. So with that, it really necessitated a review and update of the document. And most notably, before we get to any proposed content changes, there's a proposal to change the structure of the JPA related to the fiscal agent responsibilities. And that is to create a memorandum of understanding that outlines the responsibilities of both the center and the fiscal agent, something that could be updated more readily than a joint powers agreement. The JPA is approved by the city, the county, and the state. An MOU would be adopted by the city and the Animal Service Center that would outline the fiscal agent agreement. And this template really follows a model that we've put together with South Central Solid Waste Agreement, where we have both a JPA and an MOU with them that separate the fiscal agent agreements. So we're just following that template in proposing this change for the Animal Services Center. And now to get to some of the content changes that are proposed for the JPA. On the left-hand side of the screen, you see the current composition of the board: 6 voting members, 3 city elected officials or staff, 3 county elected officials or staff, and 2 ex officio or non-voting members, 1 each from the city and the county, that is a city manager, county manager, or their designees. That's the current composition of the board. Proposed changes would change the board to 8 voting members, 2 elected officials, 1 each from the city and the county, the city manager, county manager, or their designees, and members of the public appointed by the city and appointed by the county, to total 4. That would comprise the 8 voting members for the board. The JPA also has some language that needed to be clarified. So under real and personal property, there's some clarifying language changes that relate to the City of Albuquerque's previous ownership of the property. That language has been struck. Our city clerk reviewed the JPA as well and made a few changes related to the Open Meetings Act, just to clarify that the meetings would be conducted in accordance with the Open Meetings Act, and just to outline the minutes being provided in accordance with the Open Meeting Act stipulations. The previous JPA had different language relating to the removal of a board member when that board member was either from the city or the county. So the new JPA just has one statement, or one unifying statement for both the city and county that would encapsulate those situations and under which a board member might be removed. So it's consolidated language. We also clarified the language in the JPA related to the budgetary reserve and budget development. Some additional changes. There's a proposal that there be term limits for the board, maximum of two-year terms, so that would be a total of 4 years serving on the board, that the meetings be conducted quarterly instead of monthly, and that the attendance threshold be 50% of all meetings in 1 year, so that a board member would be required to attend at least 50% of all meetings. Also, language changes related to the duties, rights, and authority of the center. Actually, that's language that's added. And Clint just put in an overview of what the Animal Service Center provides to the community into the JPA. City Legal did review the proposed JPA and added some language regarding the periodic renewal of the JPA. And as you've seen, we've gone quite a few years before reviewing and renewing the JPA, so just want to make sure that that is done on a more timely periodic basis. Related to the creation of the Memorandum of Understanding, as I mentioned earlier, what we did was went through the JPA and removed any language related to the fiscal agent responsibilities or the responsibilities of the center when it came to fiscal agent duties or services. And we consolidated into a proposed MOU, which was sent out to you along with the proposed JPA. As I mentioned, it follows the South Central Solid Waste template. It outlines services to be provided to the Animal Services Center by finance, HR, IT, risk, and fleet, those city entities that currently provide services, but definitely went through a review proposal from the Animal Service Center of services needed, and acceptance and clarification of services to be provided by the city entities. We included detailed duties of the center, again, similar to what we've done with the South Central Solid Waste MOU, where we are very clear on what responsibilities lie with the fiscal agent and what responsibilities lie with the center. And then we included language related to the compensation for those fiscal services, that they be based upon an annual cost allocation study that the city currently undergoes annually, which governs the compensation related to fiscal agent services for all of our JPAs, and that's part of our budget development process. And I'll say all of the JPAs except currently the Animal Service Center, because there's different language in the current JPA for the Animal Service Center related to how much or what that fee will be for the fiscal agent services. So with that, next steps for the JPA and MOU would be to get some input from the board. We still have legal reviewing, needing to review obviously a final proposed documents once we have input from the board and community, and then there would be city council, and county approval of the proposed JPA. And as I mentioned, state approval for the JPA. The city would also need to separately adopt the MOU if we pursue that path of having a separate MOU for fiscal agent services. So that outlines proposed language changes in the JPA. And then, as noted, very much welcome any input. And I'm going to grab my notes, so I'm going to step away from the podium for a sec here.
Thank you, Mrs. Bencomo. Are there, I guess, I'll leave it to the board and understand, I know when we discussed this during the regular ASCMV board meeting, there was some discussion. I think the questions that we seemed to have was around the makeup of the board. Is there a feeling that we want to go through and see each of the changes throughout the JPA, or do we just want to focus in on particular areas of concern or questions? I'm open to how we want to delve into this. Councilor Flores?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Ms. Bencomo. So unfortunately, I didn't do my homework and didn't have an opportunity to review either document. But you said, can you state again the composition of the board?
Yes, thank you, Chair and Commissioner Flores.
No, Counselor.
Sorry about that, Councilor Flores.
It's okay.
Apologize.
It's okay, Ms. De- it's okay, Ms. De
It's
Leon.
it's
It's
this
okay to make a
chamber.
mistake here.
So the current composition of the board is comprised of 6 voting members, 3 each from the city and 3 each from the county. They may be either elected officials or staff. In addition, there are 2 ex officio members, non-voting. Those are either the city manager, the county manager, or their designees. So therefore, a total of 8 members on the board, 6 voting. That's the current composition. Is that your question?
So we have 6 voting members now. And then I know we have 3 counselors from the city of Las Cruces. But I think this says only 2 counselors and only 2 commissioners.
So the proposal shows 1 elected official from the city and 1 elected official from the county.
Oh, for the board? So you only have 1 city councilor and only 1 commissioner?
That's correct.
And what is the rationale behind that?
So I'm going to attempt to answer that, but since some of these changes were made prior to my involvement at revising the JPA, I might ask for those who were involved in the discussion to weigh in. But my understanding was to include more community partners in the board. And so in order to continue to have the 8 voting members, and I apologize, can you see the... No, you don't have a screen behind you. Oh, you have it up there.
we have it
Sorry
right
about
here.
that. So in order to maintain the 8 members of the board, but adding community members, that was the proposal, was to decrease the number of elected officials.
Oh, to maintain the number of the board.
The
Some-
8
some-
members of the board.
Something magical about that number. What is it? I mean, and the reason is because I really don't understand why a change in the composition, how it would affect the efficacy. I think that's one of the reasons everything is being looked at, to see how effective we've been and how, and so we're looking at these as our guiding points. But I don't understand how, I understand the part of having community people on the board. But I don't understand the part of eliminating positions for counselors and commissioners, since those are the 2 entities that fund the Mesilla.
Certainly, and I'd like to
Service center.
have Clint weigh in on that discussion.
Were
Mr.
you-
Thacker,
Is it your fault,
apologize.
Mr. Thacker?
I was
Counselor
actually going
Corn.
to say this was a part of my work as well as
Oh,
chair last year.
okay.
So if I can just elaborate, I think that comes from both the nature of the fact that each entity has a secondary review process. So council always reviews the budget for the ASCMV. So it's not that it doesn't go through
But
council
not the
approval. The secondary part was primarily related to I mean, functionally, if we're all armchair quarterbacks, right? I think that the idea of trading off armchair quarterbacks that might have a more sort of quarterbacky notion, that's the community part that I would refer to. So I would say giving up some of those spots to that. And then functionally, also, we struggle to have full, I would bet that we haven't had a single meeting where there was a full complement of these elected officials at the meetings. And so I would challenge us to say that we haven't been necessarily delivering on that 3 and 3 combination. But I think I hear what you're saying, feeling like you don't want it to be necessarily out of the purview of these folks. But so I would say we could change that. But I think that 3 and 3 is excessive in terms of representation of the politicos on the board. Just from, that was my perspective, just thinking about what issues we face and who brings them up and how we do so. More often we're responding to community with less information than community would be bringing to the board. You know what I mean? So that's
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, but I disagree. And the reason I disagree is because, the buck stops here, as our wonderful HST used to say. And I'm not at all minimizing community involvement. I agree with you on that we do have to have more people who are out dealing with this issue. But even if we had the entire board comprised of community people, there would still be some missing pieces. And even though your rationale or the reason or a factor in your looking at it the way you do is that we look at budgets, the commission and the council look at budgets, and then we make decisions on them. However, we don't get into the nuts and bolts of what those boards do. We just don't. I mean, we have a 2 or 3 day retreat in the winter, and then we're constantly reviewing budget items, and they come before us when things change. But we don't get to the substantive issue as to how those changes came about or why they're necessary. And I think that even if we don't have the entire composition of the representatives from the council, from the commission or the city, from the county or the city, we still have a representative. We have representatives. So if we only have 2, and one of us, breaks a leg or a foot and just can't make it, and then the other one has an emergency, so the city isn't represented there or the county isn't represented there, the likelihood of 2 people being out is higher than 3 people being out. And just in terms of the laws of probability. So that's why I oppose. I'm adamantly oppose that composition.
Would you be open to 2?
Well, I might be open to 2, but I really like 3 because, and the reason, Councilor Coran, and respectfully to everybody in the room, is because we invariably have, many, well, I'll say the times that I've been not present is because there's been, the breaking of a foot or attempted suicide of a son or another emergency of a family emergency where I have to fly out and be out. And I don't want to be missing meetings, but there's times when I can't help it. I mean, there's only one me. But when we have 3, the likelihood, as I said, is going to be better to have the representation there. And I think that having 2 would be better than 1, but I still think that 3 is really optimal.
But substantively, can I just ask, what do city sort of representatives bring that's different than commission representatives in meetings? Have we had substantial differences that were based on the councilors or commissioners' inputs more than the staff or more than community inputs? That would mean, to me, I feel like those come up in our city council discussions much more than they come up in this discussion. Those things that would be disparate or that would call for additional.
Well, the one thing that we that we haven't done as the board here, the Animal Service Center Board, is we look at the budget, we look at everything, but it is, and I don't think that will be changing in the JPA or the MOU insofar as the city being the fiscal agent. And being the fiscal agent, we have a closer look at how the money's being spent. We just do, because we review that from time to time. We have presentations all the time by our respective departments. So, you know, I feel very strongly, I don't understand why we can't expand the board. Is there a problem with having, because I totally agree with you, Councilor Corrin, that the hands-on people have a good perspective, but in terms of really managing it financially and being responsible for all of that is a big onus. And with all due respect to the public, if there was a problem with the way of how funds are being used, it's going to end up kicking the city in the rear end, not necessarily the individual board members. So I'm just looking at it in a very cautious way in terms of circumventing potential liability. And I mean it with the fullest respect for members of the public. There's just a different role altogether. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Flores. Thank you, Councilor Corrin. I appreciate, you know, I think there's a couple of, and I know, Mr. Thacker, I don't know if he's still, okay. I was just going to add, I think the concern, I understand the concerns. I think when we look at this from a fiscal management perspective, I think the way that I feel it's, and hopefully, Mr. Thacker, I don't put, you know, I think a lot of the responsibility falls on you and the finance committee to at least have those. And so, and then it is to the board to make the decisions in terms of how it's spent, but the budget's already approved by both bodies, both the county and the city. And even, you know, you take what happened in the last fiscal year, we operated going into that year with a budget that was not approved because we had disagreements on the board going into the discussion. So, you know, I think, because I think here the reason being, and the main reason for that is because even if the board, this board approves a budget, it doesn't mean that our respective, the city council or the county commission will approve the budget. And so, you know, it doesn't matter whether we have 2, 1, 3, you know, I think in the end, our respective boards will do what they, you know, we can't ultimately determine what they're going to do and how that affects us financially. I understand, like I said, once the board, the budget for the ASCMV is approved, you know, yes, the board has oversight, and yes, the public will have oversight of it, but I guess I don't have the same concerns, because having the city manager or designee or the county manager designee plus one elected official, I believe that they have a true understanding of what the budget has been approved and how to manage it, and at least then can try to steer in that direction. I'd also, you know, one of the other suggestions that came up, because you talked about having 3 versus 2 with those that are out, if we have just one elected official and that person's out, I know, just looking on the commission side, I have 4, like say if it was me, if I was the designee, I have 4 other commissioners I can go to that could come and fill in for me if I can't make it. So it goes into planning, but I think by having fewer members, it allows for us to be able to then bring in a designee or another elected official to fill in when we're not able to. I think, you know, we've the way we've set up the boards, and I believe it's probably similar in the city, when you have a backup member for your different committees. But I don't know, I just know in the county, that's usually how we set it up, that we have backup. But when we have 3 elected officials that are on there, it is harder then, because now we have fewer people on the bench to pull from to fill in for us for a meeting. So I don't know, I understand the concerns. I just don't see them being a huge obstacle or a huge issue. And I like the idea of having more public input. So, Mr. Thacker, oh, sorry.
I'm sorry, may I just respond?
Yeah, and then we'll go to Mr. Thacker
I'm
after.
sorry, Clint.
Council
Thank
Flores.
thank you, Mr. Chair. I respect, well, I understand to an extent, well, I understand what you're saying, but I don't agree with it. And the reason is because how many times have you been absent and have had, I mean, I don't mean how many times have you been absent, I mean, how many times is a board member absent and have enough time to call a colleague on the council or commission to sit in? And I'm not even sure that would be something that we could do unless it's written in. I don't know. But anyway, I think that, again, I don't think that minimizing or cutting down the number of council and commission members, maybe to 2, but definitely not 1. And I think, I mean, you know, I don't know. I mean, I really believe it's just stronger, it's better representation. I know that there are times when I've asked Cassandra or Becky something that we do, and what exactly, you know, blah, 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 and we talk about it, and but when it's only one person, you know, and I'm not saying that the commission has its truly vested interest and the council has its, or the city or the respective bodies have different interests or different whatever, everybody would probably get hit. But I think that we have safety in numbers. I think we can expand it and definitely include the public without a doubt. But I think, you know, I'd be happy with 2 at this point from each body.
Thank you, Council Flores.
Thank you.
Mr. Thacker?
What I think you said was spot on, Mr. Board.
Mr.
Chair, thank you.
Sanchez, welcome to my world.
Yeah. Except for one correction I want to say. You said that the board was lessening the amount of people. And just to be clear, we're actually increasing the number of voting members. So before it was only 6 members that could vote, but it was an 8-member board. And now we're saying that it's 8 voting members can be done. So we are decreasing the number of elected officials, but we're making more voting possible for it. And I'm perfectly okay with increasing, if I can make a suggestion, possibly to increase to 2 elected officials for the city, 2 for the county, and then 1 public appointed by the city and 1 for the county.
And that would be the
To
composition.
keep it at 8 voting members. I'd be perfectly okay with something like that. And the only reason why I take away from the public is not because I don't want the representation, but because those positions are going to be very hard to fill. People have, especially if we continue to meet in the morning, like we are, those public in the morning will be really hard.
They're at the meetings.
Well, I mean, are they though? We're lucky if we get 3 people, 2 people at our ASCB meetings in the mornings.
Well,
So,
And I think that that
Chair.
as a oh, sorry.
No, please, go ahead. 'Cause I was gonna call on you because I think, I think, sorry, when I think of those that are very active in the animal rescue and the animal community, I was gonna see what your thoughts were, because I think,
I was just going to sort of add, this is a problem with all committees that exist, basically is public input, and is it really representative of the public? Super questionable, probably never. So when people are appointed to committees, so I'm critical of that generally, but I would say the good thing about this is actually the reduction in the number of meetings. So that, to me, it makes it more feasible for community people to participate. And so I think, I'm curious if there's any rationale why that compromise, that switch from 2 elected officials from each and 1 community person from each would be problematic, or if you all see that, how you see that. But I think the overall question of whether public people can give input is one thing. I am sure that there are enough animal folks who would figure it out 4 times a year to make this happen. Whether or not the representative is entirely different, but yes, I think that would it's probably more likely to have them regularly filled if there's only one, because asking 4 people to do that might be a lot. So, sorry for interrupting.
No, not at all, please. I think we're having a healthy debate. I don't know, anybody on my left, by the way, I should make a note that at 3:13, Commissioner Sheldro Hernandez did join us, and then as County Manager Mesilla left, Assistant County Manager Miss Deborah Weir stepped in as his designee, so just want to make those notes we had that switch in the lineup at that time, so. Is there anybody, I don't know, Ms. Weir, Ms. Ward, or Commissioner Sheldro Hernandez, if you have any input?
Yeah, just kind of to reflect on the whole process of the membership, looking into that. The whole purpose of that was to kind of take the load off of county commissioners and councilmen in regards to going into, knowing that they had a lot on their plate already with other boards, other places they had to be, and not having to put too much on their plate, knowing that, not that they wouldn't want to be here or anything like that, and all respect for that, but, just adding that they just maybe having one member of each on there, that was the process that was a thought process going into that, into that process, and then incorporating the community in there, looking at maybe some of the animal groups and things like that had some more understanding of what incorporates the animal welfare and that, and what expertise they could bring to the board, bringing them into the board as well.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Ward. I think, I think I'm open. I think it's important that at least we have, some say from the public. So I guess I could go either way. Like I said, I still like the idea of having 2 from the public and 1 elected official, but I'm open to, I don't know that I'm tied specifically to each one, as long as we have some member of the public.
So,
Councilor Flores, yes?
yes, Mr. Chair, does that mean that you'd be amenable to having 2 elected officials from each body?
I could, if that was the will of the board, I could support it. I'm not tied to either one.
But you did say that having 2,
If that, like I said, I'm not, like I said, I said if it's the will of the board and that's the direction we want to go, I could support that. If the majority of the board then said, we want 1 elected official and 1 public and 2 public, I could go with that too. I could see, like I said, I think in terms of compromise, my personal preference is as proposed, but again, like I said, I wouldn't vote against the JPA solely, I wouldn't vote against the JPA because of this. So I will say my preference is as proposed.
As is mine, but I'm in the spirit of compromise.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Sheldro Hernandez.
I actually do like the way that this is set up. I've made comments before to county staff as well as fellow commissioners that there's a lot of times on boards where I know that people feel a little out of place because we don't have the expertise that's needed. Looking at putting 2 people from the public for county and city and having those individuals be experts in the field that we're looking at, which is animal services, I think is the way to go. I love sitting on this board. I love learning about what's going on, and I love giving my 2 cents when I have it. But unfortunately, I don't always have 2 cents, and I think that having 1 elected from each, knowing that the budget is always coming back to the board, to the county, and to the city, just makes a little more sense to me. I feel a little more comfortable with that, getting community members involved, since that's what this board does, and that's what Animal Services Center does, is it serves the community. I do favor the board membership as proposed. So that's where I'm at.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner. Any other comments on the board membership?
Mr. Board Chair, if I could.
Becker.
One thing that I was thinking of as well is it says 8 voting members. Does that mean that more individuals, another individual could be placed on and not be a voting member? Because my question is the ASCMV has no representation on that board. So that, would it be possible to have an ASCMV member on there as information only, or do I serve that role? Do I serve that role for it?
This has been, okay. I see, yes, I think, I could see, and I think what I go to, and with Councilor Flores, I think what we have with the South Central Regional Transit District, where we do have the director on the board, but that was just how it was established. But I think in terms of an advisory,
Yeah.
I think you already being the director and having the reports every month, or not, well, every meeting, I should say, if we move to a quarterly basis, but you advise us in that manner, as well as participating in the committees as well, so.
Correct. Okay, I just want to be sure. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Are there any other comments or questions? I don't know, is there any areas else? I know, like I said, we have was there any other areas that we wanted to delve into on the JPA or the MOU that was presented or sent to us before?
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Councilor Flores.
Thank you. I just have a question. This is a work session, and then when it comes before the board regular meeting, will there be a full discussion at that time?
So you're right.
We do have some board members missing, right?
This is a work session, Councilor Flores, and so the next step, once we receive some input and guidance, would be to draft the revised JPA and MOU to come before the Animal Service Center Board as a resolution, so that it could be recommended for adoption by both the city and the county elected officials. So that's the progression. And then for the JPA, we have an additional step, which is once the city and the county adopt the JPA, it needs to go to the state, to DFA, for approval. So that would be the next course of action after input and discussion.
So in essence, what we submit to our respective bodies in the state could turn around, theoretically, could change in that process of whatever we present.
The respected bodies of the state, or are you talking about the city
Yeah,
and the county?
City, county, and state. Right?
Could,
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you, Ms. Bicomo.
Thank you, Councilor Flores. The only other question, and I think, like I said, I think because it's already been reviewed, has been the discussion around the payments and the contributions by the city and county, and I think I said, it's a little bit, it's different than what's currently in the JPA now. Is there any, at least I thought it was I thought it allowed for varying amounts to be paid based off of the usage of the center. Did I misinterpret that, or did I
No, Chair.
misread that?
Chair, there is no, to my knowledge, there's no change with respect to the payments. The intent is for both the city and the county to contribute 50% of the operating
I must have misread something somewhere, but I apologize for that.
That's all right, that's all right. And then the city as a fiscal agent will invoice and collect payments from the county. I believe that there's still an upfront amount scheduled into the payments because I think it's 22% of the budget is contributed to the Animal Service Center in the first month of the fiscal year, and then thereafter there are equal payments from each of the parties. So I don't believe that there's a change there. But if there's something that's not clear in the document, please do let us
And
know.
I apologize, I see it here now. I don't know what I read, but I thought it was going to be, like I said, I apologize.
That's all right.
Okay, but like I said, when I read, I just want to make sure, like I said, if everything was good, but I understand. Okay, and I think to, hopefully, I just wanted to make sure as a board, if we don't have any other questions, I just wanted to reiterate, or my hope is that we could ask any questions now of either document, so that when it does come before us here as a board, hopefully we will have those items addressed before, or at least minimize, hopefully we won't have as much discussion or issues at that point with hopefully getting it passed because of the timeline you had mentioned.
Yes, Chair, and I would like to, support that statement. We certainly want to have the robust input early on before it comes to the board as a resolution. If there's any additional information regarding the changes that you would like information on, of course, we're available to answer any questions you have here, or if there are follow-up questions that could potentially impact the timeline we had talked about last time, but we certainly would like to assist in moving this forward.
Absolutely. And I'll just add in one other comment. I really appreciate the way it was broken up from the MOU between the city, between the fiscal agent and the ASCMV, mainly exactly for the goal that you had previously stated, that, if there ever has to be changes, it's a lot easier to be able to make those changes rather than having to go to the state and as well as the two boards for approval. But like I said, I think I support at least what I've seen so far. I think it's good for us to have had at least some of these things issued out, or at least updated, since it's been a while. But yeah, I don't know. Like I said, I'll open it up. Any other comments?
Mr. Chair, I do have one thing. Could you go back to the compensation, please? Yeah, so that last bullet, the services based upon cost allocation study, that amount will be changing because we added quite a few things into the MOU. So I hate to be the guy that always brings stuff up at the end of the meeting, but just know that that amount of money is going to be changing. Like, for instance, we utilize fleet, but to the best of my knowledge, fleet was never included into that amount that we've paid in the past. Same thing with IT. I don't think IT services were charged to us. So in the next coming budget year, the year after this is done, you're going to see that amount increased and asked for, if you understand what I'm saying. So there's
Mr.
no
Chair.
surprise.
Thank you. Actually, so, Mr. Thacker, I thank you for that, because that's the section that I read
That's
on
the one
the
you saw.
MOU. That's what I think when I read the MOU and saw the compensation, that it would vary. That's what I misinterpreted. So like I said, now that that's where I think I had my misunderstanding. So thank you for pointing that out, Mr. Thacker.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, if I may, thank you, Mr. Thacker, for pointing that out as well. The other services that are added in here are the risk services that were not specifically included before, but that includes drug testing and that sort of thing that we've essentially in the MOU outlined in detail all the services to be provided. The services requested by the Animal Services Center, the services that the city believes it can provide as fiscal agent. And that is an ongoing conversation, and I do anticipate that things will change in the future. There may be new services needed, or there may be services that the Animal Service Center wants to provide for itself, no longer need from the city. And so we would definitely be able to adjust those in the MOU between the Animal Service Center and the city.
Okay. All right. Are there any other questions, comments on the MOU, on the GPA?
So I guess I'm not entirely clear on where we have landed on the question of membership. Because I think that the idea here is that we provide a recommendation for you, right? Yeah. To present something that is, so I am curious if that's.
I think, well, and I think the only other person, or at least the voting member that I'd get input from would be Ms. Weir. I don't know if you have any comments on the makeup of the board composition.
Mr. Chair, board members, I would support the proposal as written. Also, we've gotten a lot of feedback from both the city and county from different animal welfare groups, and that has been a big important push on their part to have more voice on this board, and so I support it as written.
Thank you. Now, I know, as you said, I know this is just a work session, so I know it's not voting, but I think it feels like there's at least there's more support to go in the direction as written. I know in the board, if we go forward with this, it may change, it may be amended in the board meeting, and that would be the final vote of what we would go, but I think my thought, or at least my feeling is that we move forward with given the comments, that we would go forward with what's been proposed with the 8 voting members with 1 elected official from each jurisdiction, and then, or from the city and county manager, and then the 2 public from each city and county. The only question I have, and I don't know if this is specific, but for the 2 public members, is there any requirement of residence, or can it just be anybody that the city and or county nominates?
Mr. Chair, I don't believe that there's a residence requirement for them right now, but if you would like to include that, we would certainly be able to do so.
I think I just wanted to make clear, because I was hoping there wouldn't be, I think when I think of a lot of the input in the organizations that, although, that the ASCMV works with, although there are some that specifically reside in the county, there's quite a few from the city, but I would not want to minimize or reduce that pool that we might be able to pull from our community.
Mr. Chair, right now, there is no requirement for residency for either of the appointees from the city or the county.
Would we need to make it so they're a resident, not just in Doña County? I mean, I don't want anybody, seeing that they can come from Deming or El Paso or anything like that and sit on the ASCMV board. So is that something we should add in, or is that even necessary?
I don't know. I mean, I think my initial thought would be if their organization is based here in Doña County and serves Doña County, that would be good enough. But I don't know if anybody has any comments or suggestions, how they feel on that. Councilor Corn?
I imagine that we would do a kind of vetting for whoever these folks are, and I would hope that we would have sort of geographic diversity or even representational diversity, because I didn't imagine that all of these people are necessarily with an organization. But I do think there are a fair number that are in the county as well that aren't within the city limits. But I would hope that I think we could parse that out. And if we all behave selfishly, then we could just have 2 city people and 2 county people. But I don't know that that would be necessarily how that would go among the people who might be willing to do it. So, but I feel like whatever the vetting process is, including geographic and representational diversity should be one of our priorities, I would hope.
Yeah, I mean, we could.
Mr. Chair, you also mentioned individuals representing organizations. Guess, would there be any differentiation between an individual appointment or an organization appointment? I'm not sure if that was previously discussed, but would like to clarify.
And I think in my mind, no, I wouldn't want an organization appointment. I would just want an individual. I guess I always think when we have people that come and present to us as part of the Coalition for Pets and People, that generally, we have, it's the people that are running the organization, but obviously, as you kind of point out, it's very clear that they have many volunteers, and so they don't have to be specific to the organization. So I apologize, and thank you for clarifying. All right, Councilor Flores, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So looking at the proposed composition of the board, there are 4 public members and 4 public members, 2 elected officials, and 2 managers.
That's correct.
And I still don't get it. I mean, I think that maybe I take this job too seriously, but when it comes to money, and we're basically the people who are responsible for how money gets spent and how it goes, I don't know. I don't know. Is it sufficient to have 1 elected official from each entity and then the managers from those 2, and then have 4, and then, so that gives it a 4-to-4 balance? And believe me, I am not in any way underestimating the qualifications of public members. I'm just saying that, you know, the buck stops here, literally and figuratively. And I don't know, it just seems off balance. It just, I don't agree with the proposed thing, and I might be the only one who doesn't, so it won't be the first time I'm in the minority.
Thank you, Councilor Flores.
De nada. Gracias.
I would ask, I don't know if anybody sitting from the public or Gino, or, I don't know if you guys have any comments? Officer Halsey, I don't know if you have any, okay.
Can you pull it back up? Can you pull the combination back up?
The membership?
Counselor Flores?
It's Miss Mary Lou Ward.
So you're just not happy with the 4 appointed public? Is that what's correct?
No, no, it's not that I'm unhappy with the four public. I'm not happy with the fact that there's an imbalance with the elected officials, with all due respect to the managers of the respective entities. That I'm not unhappy with 4 members of the public being on there. I'm unhappy with only 1 elected official from each body being on it. And Ms. Coran, Board Member Coran asked me if I'd be happy with 2, and after everybody's, whatever you're saying, you're all happy with only 1. I said, okay, you know, I'll say I'll be happy with 2, but it doesn't look like anybody wants 2 for whatever strange reasons, but I don't understand. But yes, so Mary Lou, did I answer your question? I'm not unhappy with the number of public members at all.
I'm just trying to figure out a way to make it a little more balanced that you might be.
Well, I think if we had 2 members from each body, and people are saying, well, you know, everybody's spread thin, it's difficult to get to meetings, and it's kind of like, well, you know, you ran for office, and if you didn't look at all the potential duties you're going to have as an elected official, don't run. And I know it's hard. I mean, I'm the first one to admit that, you know, I don't have a second job, but I do have a family, and they're splattered all over the world. They're in 3 continents. So, you know, it makes it really, so, yeah, but, yeah. So, for example, if I were the city official, you know, on this body, there would be a missing person, because you're all aware, or should be aware, or probably know, whatever, that I don't make every meeting. And it's always a good feeling to know that Councilor Coran or Mayor Pro Tem Gandara are going to be there. And I don't mean to minimize the presence of commission members, but I don't know, I'd feel better if there was just 1 more person from each elected body.
Mr. Chair,
Would you feel, I'm sorry, would you feel better if there was a member from each animal control department on there instead of an elected official? Or are you still wanting the elected official?
No,
Counselor
well,
Flores?
if it's something, well, I think it's an excellent idea to have a voting member, but I don't know what the implications are in terms of, I don't know. But yeah, it'd be great because you all know exactly what's going on. You know, you're there, you're Johnny on the spot. So I'd be happy with that.
Okay.
But I still want my other elected official making a huge board, but.
I was just wondering, Mr. Chair, and Ms. Conway, you can do this as well. It says 1 city manager or designee and 1 county manager or designee. Could the city manager ask for an elected official to be their designee?
No,
Well, I was
Why not?
gonna,
they get paid a lot more than elected officials do. to begin with. But all kidding aside, there's different responsibilities. I think my colleagues up here are elected officials. I mean, when you take that oath, to do your best and uphold laws and represent people, I mean, I wasn't kidding, I mean, I wouldn't do this. You certainly don't do this for the money. You just don't. I don't know about the rest of you, but I mean, no, I do know about all three of you I know are doing it out of a real commitment to people and making this a better place to live. I don't think I'm the only one that thinks that way. I'm just more stubborn than other people, or, different people have different views,
I was just trying to point out that the city manager, if they wanted to, or the county manager, they could ask for an elected official to be their designee. I mean, we have a perfect example of Ms. Weir right here on the board now. That is Mr. Macias's designee.
Well, I don't, but then what you're addressing, it seems to by saying that, please forgive me if I'm wrong, correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems as if you're saying that I'm opposing the numbers, and I'm not opposing the numbers of the voting members on the board.
But you-
I'm not opposing the presence of the designated persons. I'm just saying that I think there should be one more elected official from the county and one more elected official from the city. That's all I'm saying. Everything else looks good. That's my,
Supervisor Jimenez? I know you had silent here.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, my name is Gino Jimenez. Just to throw in another variable to this, what if you keep it at 2 elected officials, one from the city, one from the county, 2 public appointees, one from the city, one from the county, and remove the designated or the designees from the manager's positions and keep them as ex officio members? You would still have your 8, and you would have 2 ex officio members who could sit in case of the absence of the elected officials. Possibility.
And I appreciate it. I was going to be, because my suggestion was going to be that it would be 2 elected officials instead of the city manager or county manager. But that in the case, if either body decided they could fill one of the positions with, they could fill the position with a manager if they decided. So in the case like this, where we were not able to come up with 3, the commission did designate County Manager Macias or Assistant County Manager Weir to fill in. I think it would be up to the bodies, but would that make a difference?
yeah, because it'd make a difference insofar as our structure set forth in our JPA or our MOU, whatever. Yeah, it would make a difference. I mean, I don't think that, say for example, I can't make it, and then Councilor Coran can't make it, and then Mayor Pro Tem Gandara can't make it. Well, can I call my neighbor to see if they can fit? No. Can I call another city councilor to sit in? That city councilor wouldn't have a vested interest, wouldn't have, I mean, that person wouldn't really know which end is up. With all due respect, I mean, there are quick studies without a doubt, especially our city council. But I don't think that would work, Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
It's good to kick around ideas without a doubt, but I don't know.
No, and I'm trying to figure out, I think as Gino had suggested, it's just trying to figure out if you had the two elected officials from each, if that was with a possibly ex officio or one of those others. I mean, I think, like I said,
If I may, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm still, beating my head up against the sky on this because I don't understand why we have 2 public city reps and then 2 public county reps, but only 1 elected official from the governing bodies, literally the government bodies. I don't get it.
Well, no, and that's why I'm asking is if we had, as either Gino had suggested, having 2 elected officials from the city and county and 2 public, and then the city and county manager or their designee would be the ex officio. So technically there'd be 10, or could you see it as 2 elected officials, but could be filled by the manager position should they choose to?
Gino, did you say to have, excuse me, Mr. Chair, may I ask?
Yes.
Mr. Gino Jimenez, Officer Jimenez.
Yes, ma'am.
So you propose to add 2 elected officials, one in each of each body, and then just have the city manager and the county manager be ex officios without voting? That sounds like a very good idea.
Chairman,
I'm
Council
sorry, I
Flores,
didn't-
it was just a suggestion. I was looking at other variables and staying within those 8 voting members. That was just a suggestion that came up while looking at the screen.
So apropos of staying in within those 8 voting members, why is that? Is that a magic number that I don't get? 8? No? Or,
Mr. Chair, I also think it's kind of different because if we have a tie, I mean, historically, we've never had a tie on the board. But if we do, what happens?
Well, I think we did have a tie last year voting on the budget. That's why it failed.
That's
oh,
right.
that's right.
So if we had an odd number, then, I mean, is that good or bad?
Well,
If we have an odd
the
number, so,
likelihood is higher of not having a tie. Well,
Yeah,
you're
I
the
mean-
mathematician, Mr. MIT.
Well, no, I mean, even if you have an odd number, one can abstain, and then you still end up with an even number. Like I said, the odds are better that you won't have but yeah. So I mean, I like I said, I think if I make a suggestion, and my thought would be is if this is the only, I think if we're going through on this, my suggestion would be I know Mayor Pro Tem Gantara is not here. And so, if this is the only thing I think we're having discussion about or just need to make a final decision, maybe we go forward to the board meeting with this proposal, but understanding there could be an amendment or change. And, let the board decide at that point if we want to make an amendment to change that voting members to 2 elected officials, and, even if it's like how Supervisor Jimenez is suggesting, 2 electeds from each, 2 public each, and then the ex officio members, which would be the manager or designee. But I think like I said, I feel like we're getting at a point, like I said, we're stuck. I don't think we're gonna come to a full conclusion today because we're just at a work session.
Yeah, it's just a work session, and then we'll have to go into it in depth again as a body, as a voting body.
But I think I like the idea that we have some ideas and we can vote on it as a board then and either vote it up or down and then move forward.
Mr. Chair, would it be appropriate for Ms. Bencomo and I to meet with Mayor Pro Tem and ask what her opinions are and introduce this to her so we can get immediate feedback instead of having to add another month-long process to this?
Oh, I know, and that's why I'm not expecting to do a month long. My thought is that absolutely, if you want to meet with her and she can follow up with what was discussed today, that's fine. So she's prepared to go into the meeting and she's up to date. But I think if, like I said, I still think we should be going into this meeting and make a decision on this.
Yes.
But my point is that right now, we can't make a decision by voting because it's a work session.
Yeah.
It's just like I said, so we can take this to the board or that meeting, we can make an amendment. I'm just thinking as long as we don't have any other questions on any of the other areas that we need to delve into, then I think this is something that we can make a determination pretty quickly at the board meeting on the direction we're gonna go. Like I said, and I like the idea that we were throwing out ideas, so that way we have some possible ways we can go and make amendments if that's the will of the board. Okay.
So just to clarify, Chair, would you like the proposal as it's currently written for both the JP and the MOU to come to the board for the next board meeting, which is actually next week?
Yes.
Right.
Yes,
It
next
is
week.
next week.
So
Next
my
Thursday?
suggestion is yes, and then like I
Okay.
said, if we want to, and I said if Council Flores is amenable to it, then we can make an amendment at that point or propose, during the meeting, should we want to amend this to reflect a change in the voting members, we can make that amendment, have the discussion and make that determination.
Chair, if you like, what I can also be prepared to do is to have a couple of other slides with the other options as were discussed here with respect to the board membership.
That'd be fine.
Okay.
Okay.
But, Mr. Chair, we
Yes.
will have an opportunity to have our entire board present and discuss other aspects of the JPA. And, right, yeah, at a full board meeting.
Yes. I mean,
Because this
we'll,
isn't the final.
no, this isn't the final. Like I said, I think the big, like I said, I think after the discussion we had at the last meeting, it was just making sure that we could, if there's any significant points that we had, we could try to raise them up to minimize in the
Right.
meeting. Because we were trying to make sure we met the timeline for approvals.
Yeah,
Okay. All right.
great.
If there are no other questions on the MOU or the JPA,
Not right now, later.
I said, do we need a motion or a second to dismiss a work session?
Oh, I have a question for
Okay, please go.
Mrs. Bencomo. Barbara, would it be okay for me to pick your brain on this, on a one-on-one basis? It'd be okay, huh?
Counselor Flores, absolutely. If you, and especially if you have any other specific questions related to any changes in the language in the JPA, would be happy to sit down with you.
Well, I and
over that.
any other board member.
Absolutely. I sent the drafts out last week, but they are unchanged from the previous drafts that I had sent out last month. If there are any questions or concerns that I need to be able to, that we need to be able to address at the next board meeting, would welcome the opportunity to learn more about that in advance of the meeting.
Great. Thank you so much for your work, Ms. Bencomo. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Well, if there are no objections, then we'll call this work session adjourned at 4:09 PM. Thank you.